Hey, it's your boy Exodus here. I'm glad to finally be able to do a little tour for you guys so you guys can, so you can see the whole wheel. So we're going to be replacing brake pads today. Not very difficult, very easy job. You only need a few things. There's certain things that you can use if you don't have all the tools that I have, all you need is a wrench. You need to know if you get like a wrench and a socket set that goes from 1 all the way to 18, that should be enough, because most American cars will go with 10, 12, foreign cars 14 or 12, depending if it's a Honda or something like that. But most of them are gonna be ran with those socket sizes. The only one you have to really worry about are the ones that come with the rims. So mine is a 20-inch rim, and the socket to take off the rims is a 22 size. So it really just depends on your rims. Most basic rims that are like 19, 18 inch rims, they have normal sized ones. If you don't have the little kit that comes with the car, it's usually in the trunk with the spare. It's like literally the same thing that you use to jack up the vehicle is the same thing you can actually use to break the lug nuts off. Now, if you don't have any of that, let's say you're at home, you could always use a breaker bar. I say it's like a long wrench, has a little hexagon at the end of it where you can put the sockets in, and it makes taking out the lug nuts a lot easier, especially because these lug nuts are torque spec from the factory. And usually if you don't know the torque spec, you literally can go on Google and be like, a 2017 Challenger RT lug nut torque spec. That goes into a little bit more advanced stuff. If you don't know the torque spec, you want to tighten that lug nut as hard as possible. Simple as that. Other than that, you can use anything really, a breaker bar. If you're strong enough, you can use a regular wrench if it's not too tight. But what I'm going to use today is the Milwaukee Impact Wrench. Just letting you guys know, these guys are not sponsoring us at all. I'm just letting you know these are the tools I like using. Ever since I bought this, I haven't had an issue with taking anything out. This little beauty has different modes. So there's mode 3, mode 1, which is very soft, very slow. 2 is a little bit stronger. 3 is like it going full. And then there's an automatic one where it literally can go all the way up to 12 foot-pounds of braking torque, which is a lot because most bolts would be 86, 120 foot-pounds tightened. So this thing can definitely break it easily. And as long as you have a good battery with it, it'll take things out really easily for you guys. So yeah, today's gonna be quick. I'm gonna speed through this video. Maybe some of the things I'll cut up just so it's not boring as hell. There's nothing really special. I got this regular old Duralast from AutoZone. If you like going O'Reilly's, you can get their brand. When you buy them, they come in sets. There's 2 for each side. Yeah, let's get into it. Oh, I did not mention this. I'm going to mention this right now since I did this. First you want to do is you want to break the lug nuts off, right? You don't want to just lift it up and try to do that, because sometimes, especially if you're using it manually, the tire will literally spin as you're trying to loosen it up. When you have an impact wrench, it makes it a little bit easier. You can just hold the tire, boop, 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 boop. But out of force of habit, I did it with the weight of the vehicle so it wouldn't spin. This makes it a little bit easier. Yeah. While you're at it, I would, when you first take care of your tire, one of the few things I would say you need to look at while you're changing the brakes, you want to make sure that everything in here is nice and tight, there's nothing loose. You want to make sure that like you're double checking everything, because maybe when you're replacing your brakes, you notice something else is messed up. Like one of the few things that a lot of people don't think about, sorry if I'm speaking a little bit too fast, is your rotors, right? So I would say feel them, and if it feels bumpy, right, if they're like rivets and stuff like that, you don't want that on your rotors. Your rotor should be one smooth disc, right? So like right here, my rotors, they're kind of old and worn. It needs to be replaced. A little bit pricey though. Even if you go for a basic set, they're like 100, 120 bucks. If you get the more expensive pair, you're looking at like 250 for a set. So they get really expensive, but definitely one of the things you should check out. All right, so took the tires off, broke the lug nuts off. Once I took them off, took the tire off. Now you have where the pistons are connected. So right here, this is where the pistons that when you press the brakes, squeeze the brakes onto the rotor, so it stops them from moving, right? And then you have the bracket itself, right? You don't need to take the bracket off unless you're replacing the rotor, right? That's when you're gonna take this whole disc out. But if you're not taking the entire rotor off, you don't really need to, you don't need to take the bracket off. All you need to take off is these little pistons right here. There are 2 points that it's connected to, right? And they have kind of like this little spring, and it literally is what like lets this whole piston like shift as it's squeezing on the brake pad. So all you need to do is find the correct size. Right now, I believe it is a 12. I could be mistaken. See, bam. Always carry 2 just in case. Boom. I would say it's a 13, but the 14 seems to be working. If it ends up breaking loose, trying to loosen it, we'll just get the 13 and put it on. But other than that, it is pretty self-explanatory right now. Sometimes I like using pressure pliers when I do this, because this little spring actually rotates. So as you're trying to break it loose, trying to loosen it, it will spin it and you won't be able to break it loose. So it's good to have these little things. You're gonna grab onto the metal portion of where the spring is at. You're gonna grab it, use these pressure pliers. If you have to, adjust them, and then just how pressure pliers work, you're gonna grab, squeeze until they lock. After that, easy day. All right, so once you take these bolts off, right? Pretty easy, right? Once you take those 2 little bolts off, one on the top, one on the bottom, you really will just grab and pull her really slowly out. And if you pull and you don't like get ready to catch it, she will drop because she's connected still. Ooh. These are not the correct ones. See? This sometimes happens. When you grab the wrong ones. So, this right here, right? These are your brake pads, right? So these are the things that when you press on the brake, there are these 2 little hydraulic things that grab that and they squeeze this with the disc, right? And as they put pressure on this metal disc, it actually turns, the physical energy, right? The momentum energy into heat energy. Because as this thing presses up against that metal, it starts converting that forward momentum, that physical energy, into heat energy. And as it's converting it into heat, it then slows down the vehicle. Because now you're converting the heat. So as you're converting it into heat energy, you're losing physical energy, which then slowly stops your car. That's how brakes works, right? It's kind of crazy because all it's doing is converting physical energy. The momentum is going and converts it into heat by grabbing these ceramic plated brakes and just pressing up against the metal. Simple as that, right? So the plan today was to replace these, but you know, it's weird sometimes because certain cars you can't see the wear lines on the brake pads, especially in the front. But in the rear, it's usually a little bit easier because it's just a lot easier to see because one, the bracket and the pistons are smaller and it's easier for you to see them, right? So the one thing that actually will tell you is if you can see this little metal thing right here. Once this starts touching your rotors, right, it's gonna make a really loud screeching noise. And that is usually when you have to replace these pads, right? As you can see, it still has a little bit of life. See that little divot right there in the center? Right there? So that means that it still has enough life. You know, it'll buff for now, which is good because it lets me get a little bit better brake pads later. That also helps with the airflow to help cool down the brakes. So very important for you to have this, because if you're past this where you don't have it, one, you should already be replacing the brakes because this metal thing is already touching your rotor, which is already damaging it. Second, it would heat up the brakes, the pads too much, and it might stop it from functioning correctly. So it is what it is. All right, guys. So this is going to be a little bit more of a zoomed in portion of it, just so I can show you guys some of the things. You know, bring it a little bit closer up. Right. So as you can see, the rotor's right there. Right, they're like these bumps that I was telling you about. You literally can almost see them and also feel them when you run your fingers through them. Right. Not only that, but these are the pistons I was talking to you about. Right. So as you press onto your brakes, those two pistons push up against the brake pads, which then presses those ceramic plated brake pads onto this metal rotor, which then converts the physical energy into heat energy, right? So sometimes you have to actually replace these as they get worn down. As you can see, this one used to be slotted, right? Slotted freaking Joe rotor. It eventually went all the way. Now it's only in the edge over here, which means my brake pads are not reaching this point right here. And you can actually now see the difference by looking at that little gap that it has now on it, is where like how much my rotors have been used. That was from using metallic on metallic. I was using metallic brake pads, which ended up, you know, costing the rotor its life. So there's pros and cons for everything. There are, you know, semi-metallic, there are ceramic, and there is an even organic one. Remember we've talked about brakes before? So the semi-metallic with a metallic rotor does a little bit more damage, so you might have to end up replacing that rotor a lot sooner than you would expect. Now when I was talking to you about the brake pads, so this is right here, right? See that little gap right there? That right there, once that is gone, you should definitely be replacing it, because by the time that right there is gone, that metal right there will be touching your rotor, which will then cause damage onto your rotor and make a loud squeaking noise. Sorry for the super exposure there on my hand. It's oh, there, fixed it. Oh no, wow, there, weird. But yeah, so these are what they're gonna look like. As you can see, it still has a little bit more life on it, so I'm just gonna end up slapping on it and continue on and end this video after I show you guys how to put it on correctly and stuff like that. Also, when you are replacing your guys's brake pads, these not always come with the kit that you buy. Like when you buy from either O'Reilly's or Duralast, sometimes they don't come with this little bracket. It's where the brakes slide into. These need to be replaced also with the brake pads. They come off, you literally just lift them off and they just come right off. Simple as that. All right, time to start doing this now. Ready, guys? We're gonna do this real quick. We're gonna take care of this. Put the brake pads back on, since again, they are still good. You also, when you're looking at your brake pads, right, you wanna make sure, right, look at this. You wanna make sure that there's nothing like uneven about them. Like if there's like any, like one side is more, you know, diminished than the other, because that will actually show that your, like how your rotors are and how it's affecting this. Or if it's too loose, if it's too tight, or if it's like the wrong, it actually will tell you, like in the box, it will give you examples of like a normal wear patterns, you know, and they'll tell you like what the problems are, if it's the calipers, and it says it right here on the box. It's like they tell you, they break it down for you and tell you exactly what the issues are for each one. Right? If they were uneven, one side is worn down in the pair, caliper piston is hanging up, caliper slide not functioning correctly. So that slide, right? You won't be able to see it over here, but like that metal thing I told you that you need to replace, that right there, when the slide starts like not having enough lube and it keeps getting stuck, it'll end up not letting the pads shift and slide correctly, and it might like slide like this, or one of them might be stuck and only one side is actually applying the brakes, only one side. So usually I say you try to put it back in the same place that you had it before, right? So as you can see that this right here has literally the pistons like mark on it, right? So I'm gonna put these back on, right? Simple. You're just gonna grab that, you're gonna slide it, put this little sucker right back in. Boom. That's first one. I'll put the second one in. All right, gotta boop, 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 slide. I can come in here and check to make sure that metal is not touching the rotor, because you don't want that at all. You don't. So I brought this little tool right here, right? This tool right here. I use this tool, right? There's an actual tool that you use for this, but I don't got it. You know, you don't need it when you have this, right? So you grab this when you put new rotors on, of course. And there's these pistons right here, right? The pistons I showed you before. You'd grab these, right? You put the bigger end on top of the top portion of the piston, and then you start tightening it to push the pistons in when you're putting your rotors in. Because right now, since I'm putting on the same rotors, right? Since I'm putting on the same rotors, it doesn't need any of that because it's the perfect size. It's like already was there holding it. So now all I have to do is just slide that bad boy right in, right? So I'm gonna grab this, you know, boop, align it a little bit, make sure it's good, make sure it's, and then you're gonna slide that bad Larry right in there, and voila. Boom, they're back. Now, grab the bolts, right? I put them in just so they can be held in there for a bit, you know, so it can hold it in its position before I tighten it. So for these bolts, you don't have to, like I mentioned before, you don't have to have torque specs on these bad Larrys. All you have to do is just grab it, tighten it, and voila, it's good. Do a little check right here. Bang. So torque wrench, right? Literally what it looks like. I'll tell you the foot-pounds. Sometimes they'll tell you the newtons. If Newton meter, if you guys use that, but here in America we use foot-pounds, right? So you'd go here, you loosen it up. You can look up the torque specs, right? Either on Google, or if you're an avid car guy like me, you can go to AutoZone and you can actually get the instruction manual for your make and model, right? So it literally, so every make, right? Like Ford, Honda, Toyota, Dodge, and they have parent companies or sister companies, they'll all fall under the same thing. So for Chrysler, you'll have Chrysler, Dodge, Fiat, right? Mostly just Chrysler and Dodge. They use the same bolts, the same specs for their models. And it actually will say, you know, Chryslers, Dodge, you know, Challengers, whatever, and they'll break it down for you for what model. If you have a basic model, if an SRT model, Just look it up, or again, just Google it and you'll find it's not that difficult. So you will find the spec, right? Once you get the spec where you need it, you'll just tighten this up. Bam. Now it's locked into that spec. Now we're gonna speed through this and we'll get to the point where we tighten it. All right, so we've put the lug nuts in as tight as we can. I make sure you use the lowest setting on my impact wrench because you don't really want to use impact wrench to tighten these things up because sometimes you can over tighten them, you can snap them. Big issue, you don't want that. So I've tightened them as much as I could with hand tighten, which I use the lowest setting on this thing, which is a 1. Now you can drop the vehicle down, right? Because you want the weight of the vehicle on it. You're gonna grab that little torque wrench and put it on. Now, what you'll do is you'll keep pushing onto it until you hear a click. So you'll keep go, nothing, right? Keep going, boom, click, it's in spec. So these things need to be calibrated, all right? So it's not like you buy it once and it's gonna be always in spec. No, so you have to get it calibrated. I would never drop it if I were you. Dropping it will cause it to lose its torque spec. It'll mess up the thing and you have to get it calibrated because at that point you don't know if dropping it caused it to lose calibration. All right, so you go over here, do it in a star pattern. Go. Boom, click, inspect. And then you go, same thing, boom. Awesome. I've tightened all of them. You can double check, go over them one more time just to make sure that they're all in spec. Once you're in spec, you're good. You have officially replaced your brakes and hopefully now it's a little bit safer for you. But yeah, that's all this video has, man. Thanks for watching and hopefully you guys learned something. Next time I need to replace these rotors anyway. Next time I'm able to, we're going to be replacing these rotors with a little bit better ones. It's going to be drilled and slotted because you don't really need, I've already explained this in a previous video. So it's going to be a drilled and slotted one and hopefully you guys like that content. All right, deuces.